So when it comes to the business intelligence module, this is a new one that we've added. We've been working on this for quite some time, and it's in response to what has been a lot of requests around management reporting. So while the reporting capability that we currently have in the system does deliver the ability for you to extract data and export it out into CSV files and stuff like that, it's not sufficient for aggregating data and doing charting and those types of things. And that's really what this new module is meant to address, is add a lot more sophistication on the reporting front. So we'll have some standard reports similar to what we currently have in our reporting module. So many of them will essentially move over into this module as well. But then beyond that, we'll look at the drag and drop report designer that we have included in this new module, where you can create custom reports. And then it has a lot of the features that are missing currently in our standard reporting module, which is things like aggregation, calculated fields, formulas, and so on, as well as timed reports. So you can set a report to run at a particular time and have it automatically email results and those types of things. We've also added a lot of customization capabilities on the formatting front. Like, for example, if you wanted to change the labels on the column headers, or if you wanted to change the formatting of how the data is represented, and so on and so forth, we have all of those kinds of things built into this new BI module as well. And we'll walk through some of those things today. The exports, we have added exports to various formats like Excel and PDF and Word, etc., and we look at that as well. Finally, the charting capabilities. So this is something we don't have today, and this new BI module adds the ability for you to add charting based on the report data that you essentially pull together. And there's a lot of capabilities there in terms of the types of charts that you can use, and again, customization in terms of how it's presented and so on and so forth. Finally, the customizable dashboard. So once you've created a lot of reports and charts and stuff like that, we also have a separate layout designer that allows you to create a customizable dashboard where you basically pull together exactly the kinds of things that you might want to look at together on, let's say, a daily basis or a weekly basis. Okay. The new BI module is Enterprise Edition only. So if you're not an enterprise, then this is not something that will be available as part of the Agiliron subscription. So I'll switch to the demo. And before I do that, let me just mention a couple of housekeeping things. So all the attendees are muted as part of this webinar, but there is a chat window that's there in your GoToWebinar window where you can go in and post questions. And this is a fairly packed schedule today in terms of what we need to cover. So we may not have a lot of time to go over and do Q&A, but we'll try to catch a few of them at the end if you want to post the questions to the chat window on the GoToWebinar window that you have. And then we are recording this session, so once we complete the webinar, hopefully by end of the day, we'll essentially send out the recording to everybody that has registered for this session. Okay. Okay, so let me switch over to the demo of the business intelligence module. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice here is that we've added a new menu item here in the left panel for business intelligence. And if you go to that, you're essentially initially presented with what is essentially a navigation area for all the different reports and such that you might have pulled together. And this is a combination of standard ones that come with the system that we provide, and then custom ones that you may create. Okay, so the organization here is much like any folder structure. So under standard reports, you can see these things are categorized by different modules in the system. So for example, if we go to the sales orders module, you can see there is a sales orders detailed report here. Okay, and we'll obviously continue to enhance this with additional ones over a period of time. If you go back to the all view here, and then you can actually sort this thing here by alphabetical, or if you want to change the layout, you can from the thumbnail view that you see currently to a list view, right? And there's of course the search as well that's available. Okay, so let's go back to our sales orders view here. And here for this sales orders detailed report that we have, I can click on this button here and I can go ahead and open this report. And this loads the data from your particular database using the reporting that we've essentially built as part of the standard report that we are providing here. Okay, so it's a pretty simple report. It provides a few columns of data, and there are about 163 records. And this is doing a paging where it's showing the first 100, and then you can page over to the next one and shows you the remaining ones. Okay, so that's the basic presentation of what a table report looks like. And then for this report, now you can see there are a few controls here at the top that you can use to operate on this report that you run. Okay, so the first is I can click this and I can do an export. Okay, so if I say export to XLSX, which is the Excel format, I can click that. And that will open up this report in Excel. And you'll notice here that the presentation of this is exactly like it was on what you saw on the screen, right? So, so this is not a CSV export. This is a full Excel export. And one of the choices that we had when we did that export is to say we want to maintain the formatting, in which case what you see on the screen is what you get export out into the Excel file. Okay. So similarly, we could do the same thing for PDFs or Word documents and so on. So that's the first piece here is the export. The second piece here is I can share this report with somebody. Okay, so for users that are already in the system, I can send this to any of the recipients, or I can send an email pointing them to this particular report. And you can attach that either as an Excel file or a CSV file or a PDF. So you can decide in what format you want to actually share this with somebody else. Okay, so that's the second piece here. The third is a broadcast capability. So this is where if you wanted to set up something to run at a particular frequency, or if you wanted to run an FTP to a particular site, this is where you can go ahead and come and set that thing up. So let's say, for example, I set up a personal broadcast. Okay, so here I can put an email subject and a body to myself. Again, I can select what format I want this to be sent. And then here I can select the frequency at which this thing is run. So let's say, for example, the default here is let me run this weekly every Saturday, or let's say Monday morning, right? And I can set up this subscription. And what happens then is that this report gets automatically executed at that time, and an email essentially delivered to your inbox with the export of that report in the format that you've chosen to actually send this. Okay, so this is the time report part of this, where you can essentially set these subscriptions up and have these things automatically land in your inbox. This is adding favorites. So if there are specific reports that you want to kind of elevate as your favorites, you can click this and do that. And then the final piece here is the ability for you to take a snapshot. You might run these reports at different times, and obviously if you want to save off data, let's say end of month report for sales, and you want to save this thing over time, where you want to record the one at the end of July and the end of August and so on, you can do that by using this create snapshot. So what this allows you to do is essentially take a snapshot at a particular point in time, save that off, and then you can come back and pull that up later and see what that data looked like. So you can add the historical stuff into your database here. Okay, so that's basic capabilities. Once you have a report set up, this is the way you run it, and then these are the kinds of things that you can do to operate on that particular report. Okay. Now let me switch over and go into what it takes to actually create a custom report. Okay, so all the new things that you create all start with this round plus button. Okay, so if I come here and I say I want to create a new report. So here I get to select various views that we have set up for the different modules. So let me choose the sales orders one for now. Okay, so when I select the sales orders view, you can see here on the left panel that it gives me all the fields that are relevant in the context of sales orders. So there's obviously the ones that are specific to sales orders themselves, but everything correlated with it is also available in these different buckets that's listed out here. Okay, so let me start with the sales orders information, which is the basic set of fields that are available here. Okay. So what we're going to do here with in terms of constructing this custom report is we're going to take some of these fields that are available, and we're going to drag them and drop them here as columns to essentially construct the set of things that we want to see as part of this report. Okay, so I'll start with the order number. Okay, and then I'll add the order total. I'll add the created time. Okay, I'll add the channel order ID, which identifies, the order ID in the channel that this order came from. And then let me pick one of the other ones from one of the other buckets, which is the customer name. Okay, now I can actually drag this thing around and change the sequence in which these things are presented. Okay. And I'll move this to the left. And then, so now we have a report here that we've constructed. Okay, pretty simple, right? We took a bunch of fields. Now, obviously, these are fields, many of them that you will recognize. Obviously, our goal is to essentially expose the entire database of fields that's available and the data that's been aggregated into them and have the ability for you to essentially, pull out exactly what you need. Okay. So now that we have this report, let's go and do some customization in terms of the formatting and how this is presented. Okay, so I'll start with the account name, and let me go and change some of the formatting here. Okay, so first what I'll do is I'll select this suppress duplicates. Okay, which essentially means that it will essentially group all the same account names together, so that you can now see that all the orders from account name 1 are presented together as one block. Okay. Let me go into the order number. You can see this thing is showing commas as 1000 separator, which we don't want. So I'll go ahead and edit that. Okay. So let me turn off the 1000 separator. Okay. And that updated the order number. Now the order total here. Let me go ahead and make some changes to formatting of that. And we could have done these things together by just selecting the fields here and making the changes, as opposed to closing it and opening it like I just did. Let me add decimal places too, and then I'll add a prefix, the $sign. Okay, and then I will display that. Okay, so now you can see that we've made changes to how the order total amounts are presented. Okay. One other thing we could do is change the labels that we see for each of these column headers. So let me go ahead and edit that. Instead of account name, I'll say customer. Okay. Okay, so now we have this report somewhat formatted the way that we want, and it kind of shows you some of the capabilities available here for you to really customize exactly how you want this report to be presented. Okay, so next what we can do is I can show you some of the other things that we could do here. One, for example, is sections. Okay, so with sections, what you can do is select one of these fields and say I want to essentially have this presented as separate sections. In which case, when I run this report, what you will see is that it's essentially presenting now this data customer by customer, as each of them as a separate section. Okay, so here you can see that this presentation, you can see this thing is now broken up one customer after the other, okay, and you got this sort of real nice table that flows, okay. We could add certain capabilities here for conditional for the way that this section is presented as well, okay. So here I could come and, for example, instead of having a single page, I could have said, let me change this to a tabbed presentation, okay, in which case now this thing will collapse down to a set of tabs that you can look at one after the other. Okay, so here's an example, right? So now I can click this, and I can see each of these things presented separately. Okay, so that's the mechanism to present things as sections. Now we can go back and let's turn on some filtering to be able to pull together. So I'll put this thing back, and then let me add account name as a filter. Okay, so now here you can see on the right I have a button for filtering. Okay, and now I can get a list of all the accounts, and if I wanted to just see a presentation of a few of them, I can essentially select from a list here that will come up in a second. Okay, so this is taking a little while, so why don't we kind of move on to some of the other things. Let me go ahead and present some of the other capabilities like calculated fields. So here, this is obviously the list of all the fields that are available that we are presenting, but if you wanted to create some of your own that's based on a combination of fields that might exist in this in this table, then this is your calculated field creator, if you will, where you can come in and put in formulas, and you can select obviously from the list of fields that are available to present exactly the kinds of things that you might want to pull together. You can see here there are capabilities for all the typical operations, including else and if and cases and then things like that. So pretty sophisticated capabilities here for you to be able to create some of these calculated fields. Okay. So let me kind of pause there. I know we are somewhat short on time, so I'll just quickly run through a couple of other things. So so this is a basic reporting capability in terms of pulling together the data, presenting it in a tabular format. Now we can go to charts here and create some charts from the same data. Okay, so based on the fields that we have selected, I could, for example, select customer here and the horizontal axis, and then let's say I pick the order total on the vertical, or maybe I'll switch these things around. Yeah, this is fine. So here, obviously, this is pretty dense because we haven't really filtered the list of account names, but this is a simple a chart that we created. Now you'll notice here that the auto chart capability here is the one that the system automatically, based on the fields that you picked, it will decide what's sort of the best way to present this. But you certainly have the option to go ahead and choose a different one yourself, in which case you've got all the standard things that you might expect in terms of bar charts, column charts, scatter plots, and so on and so forth. Okay, so but the auto capability is pretty nice because then based on the data, the system automatically picks one that seems optimal and then presents that. Okay, so so this is the charting side of it, and then if I go to the output, we also have the ability for you to combine these different charts that you might have, and then let me go ahead and go. Okay, so here you can see now that we had combined, we had a chart, and then we also had tabular data, that both of these things got presented together as part of this particular report. So when you're creating these charts, it doesn't have to be restricted to one. You can actually add any number of these charts together. Okay, so here's the first one that we created, but then we could have also added a second one, right? So once you have the data pulled together, you can create multiple charts displaying exactly the kinds of things that you want to visualize. And then when you create that output, you can bring together the charts along with the tabular data and present the whole piece together. Okay, so that's the report side of things. And let me go ahead and save this report that we've created. Okay, so we'll call this V9 demo. Go ahead and save that. Okay, and then now I can come back here and I can create a dashboard that takes all of the stuff that you've already created and now has a drag and drop ability for you to position these together and present that as one sort of integrated dashboard, right? So we could pick multiple charts that we have. Okay, so let's start with the one that we just created. Okay, so we can type this, we can drag it here. Okay, so so that's essentially the dashboard side of this, is that we can pull together different pieces of all the different reports that one might create and essentially present them together as one particular tab. And then so you could create multiple of these dashboards, one for sales, one for purchasing, whatever the case might be, and then essentially customize what that presentation is. And you can essentially arrive here, pull up these dashboards, and immediately get a real-time feedback in terms of how the business is doing on that particular front. Okay. So we are about 25 minutes in, so let me kind of pause there as far as the reporting module is concerned. Suffice it to say, there is a lot of capabilities within the business intelligence module. What I showed today is obviously just scratching the surface.